Right now, beneath the waves, something extraordinary is beginning. As the sun dips below the horizon, a signal ripples through the ocean depths. Billions upon billions of creatures stir in the darkness, preparing for a journey they will make every single night of their lives. This is not a seasonal migration across continents. This is a daily commute through 1,000 meters of water, the largest movement of animals on planet Earth. And yet, most of us will never know it exists. Come with me tonight, and I will show you a hidden highway in the sea, a spectacle of life that makes the greatest migrations on land seem small by comparison. Our journey begins here, at the surface of the open ocean, far from any shore. The sun is setting, painting the water in shades of amber and rose. To our eyes, the ocean seems peaceful, almost empty. A few seabirds glide overhead, and perhaps a dolphin breaks the surface in the distance. But this tranquility is deceiving. The surface is only the thinnest skin of a world that extends kilometers downward into a realm of perpetual night. What you cannot see is that beneath us, in the cold darkness below, an entire hidden ecosystem is preparing to rise. For millions of years, the ocean has been divided into distinct layers, each with its own rules, its own inhabitants. The sunlit zone, where we float now, extends down about 200 meters. Here, sunlight penetrates, photosynthesis happens, and life is abundant. Phytoplankton bloom in vast green clouds. Small fish dart through the currents. But this zone is also the most dangerous. Predators patrol these lit waters constantly, using their keen eyesight to hunt. To be visible here during the day is to be vulnerable. And so many creatures have learned to hide in a place where light cannot reach. Below the sunlit zone lies the Twilight zone, a place scientists call the mesopelagic. It begins where the light begins to fail, around 200 meters down, and extends to about 1,000 meters. In this vast middle layer of the ocean, only the faintest traces of sunlight penetrate, too dim for photosynthesis, too weak to illuminate prey. It is a world of perpetual dusk, where shadows merge with the water itself. For humans, this zone remained almost completely unknown until very recently. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the Twilight Zone. But it is here, in this alien realm, that much of the ocean's life truly resides. The creatures that live in the Twilight Zone face challenges we can barely imagine. There is no light to grow food, so nothing can photosynthesize. Everything that lives here must either hunt other animals or feed on the slow rain of organic particles drifting down from above, the marine snow that falls endlessly from the productive surface waters. Pressure increases with every meter of depth, crushing and cold. And yet, life has found a way not just to survive, but to thrive in astonishing numbers. The biomass in the mesopelagic zone may exceed all the fish in all the sunlit waters above. You and I are about to meet them, but these creatures do not stay in the Twilight Zone all day and all night. They have discovered something remarkable, a survival strategy that is as simple as it is effective. During the day, when predators with sharp eyes patrol the sunlit surface, they remain hidden in the dark depths below. But when night falls and the surface grows dark, they rise. They swim upward through hundreds of meters of water to feed in the rich surface waters under the cover of darkness. And then, just before dawn, they descend again, fleeing back to the safety of the deep. This is the diel vertical migration, the greatest daily movement of animals on our planet. The scale of this migration defies comprehension. We are not talking about thousands or even millions of animals. Every night, billions upon billions of fish, squid, krill, jellyfish, and countless other creatures rise from the depths in a coordinated ascent. Scientists estimate that up to 10 billion tons of animal biomass participates in this migration daily. To put that in perspective, That is more than the combined weight of all the humans on Earth moving up and down through the ocean every single day. It is a conveyor belt of life, invisible to us, operating on a scale that shapes the entire ocean ecosystem. The Twilight Zone and its daily migrants were hidden from us for so long because we lacked the tools to see them. Early oceanographers would lower nets into the deep and pull up strange, delicate creatures they had never seen before, but they had no way to understand their behavior or count their numbers. It was not until the invention of sonar during World War II that humanity got its first hint of this hidden world. Naval operators kept detecting a mysterious layer in the ocean that seemed to reflect sound waves. They called it the deep scattering layer, and they thought it might be the seafloor. But then, they noticed something impossible. The layer moved. Chance time. It rose at night and sank during the day. What they had discovered was not the seafloor, but an almost solid layer of living creatures. The sound waves were bouncing off the gas-filled swim bladders of billions of fish and the bodies of countless other animals. The ocean, it turned out, was far more full of life than anyone had imagined. Today, with advanced sonar, submersibles, and underwater cameras, we can finally witness this migration in real time. We can descend into the Twilight Zone and watch as the darkness comes alive with movement. The sun has now set completely. Darkness covers the surface waters, and below us, in the deep, the great ascent is beginning. Let us descend together and watch the ocean transform. We are sinking now, leaving the last vestiges of daylight behind. The water around us is a deep, darkening blue, the color of ink spreading through water. Above, the surface is now just a faint, shimmering membrane of lighter blue. Below, there is only darkness. At 50 meters, 100, the pressure builds. Your ears would pop continuously if you were here in person. The temperature drops rapidly as we leave the warm surface waters, but you are safe with me on this journey. We can go as deep as we need to, becoming witnesses to a world humans were never meant to see. Can you feel the immensity of the water pressing in from all sides? At 150 meters, we pass through the lower boundary of the sunlit zone. This is the depth where plants can no longer photosynthesize. The light is too weak, the wavelengths too filtered by the water above. Red light has long since been absorbed, then orange, then yellow. Only blues and greens penetrate this far, and even these are fading fast. We are entering the realm of permanent twilight. If you were to look around with only your eyes, you would see almost nothing. Just an endless, featureless murk. But if we turn on a light, the truth is revealed. The water is not empty, not even close. We are surrounded. In every direction, in every cubic meter of water, there is life. Tiny copepods, barely visible even in our light, jerk through the water in rapid bursts. Translucent krill drift by, their bodies so clear you can see their internal organs. A salp, looking like a floating gelatinous barrel, pulses past us, filtering water for microscopic food. And there, a flash of silver. Small fish, no longer than your finger, darts away from our light. These are the vanguard of the migration, the smaller creatures that begin their ascent earlier in the evening. But the main mass of the migration is still below us, waiting for full darkness before they rise. We continue down, passing 200 meters, then 300. The pressure is now 30 times what it is at the surface. The cold bites, just a few degrees above freezing. No natural light reaches here, not even at noon on the brightest day. This is the mesopelagic zone proper, the heart of the twilight realm. And yet, as we descend, something astonishing begins to happen. The water around us starts to glow. Tiny pinpricks of blue-green light appear in the darkness, winking on and off like fireflies. This is bioluminescence, the living light produced by the creatures of the deep. In the absence of sunlight, life has learned to make its own light. Down here, bioluminescence is not a novelty. It is a necessity. Scientists estimate that up to 90% of the animals in the twilight zone can produce light. They use it for hunting, flashing suddenly to startle and illuminate prey. They use it for communication, signaling to potential mates with species-specific light patterns. And they use it for defense, ejecting clouds of glowing particles to confuse predators or using counter-illumination to hide their silhouettes from hunters looking up from below. In the twilight zone, light is both a tool and a language, and every creature speaks it fluently. The darkness is alive with conversation. We cannot hear, only see. At 400 meters, we reach a strange kind of twilight equilibrium. The faint blue glow filtering down from the surface is so dim it is almost imperceptible, but it is still there, still detectable to eyes adapted to the darkness. This is the zone where predators wait, looking upward, searching for the silhouettes of prey moving between them and the faint light above. It is a dangerous game of light and shadow. The migrants must pass through this killing zone twice every day, once on their way up and once on their way back down. Evolution has armed them with tricks to survive. Many have silver bellies that reflect light, making them harder to see from below. We pass 500 meters, then 600. We are now deeper than most submarines can safely dive. The water is pitch black, save for the bioluminescent sparkles and our artificial lights. And then we see it. A wall of life rising from below. It starts as a faint shimmer in the darkness, a thickening of the water itself. Then shapes begin to resolve. Thousands upon thousands of lanternfish, each no bigger than your thumb, their photophores glowing in neat rows along their bellies. Schools of krill, their bodies packed so densely they look like clouds. Jellyfish of every size, pulsing upward with deliberate grace. The migration is here, and it is vast beyond imagining. We hold our position and let them pass around us. It is like standing in the middle of a river. The sound is surprising. You can hear the clicking of krill, the soft rush of water displaced by millions of bodies. The migration moves at a steady pace, about 100 meters per hour, a leisurely speed for such small creatures, but they have far to go. They will rise another 300 or 400 meters before they reach the surface waters where plankton blooms. There, they will feed in the darkness until dawn threatens, and then they will make the long descent back down. We will follow them upward now, into the hunting grounds. As the migrants rise, they are not alone. Predators follow the migration, shadowing the ascending mass of prey. Larger fish, squid, even whales track the movement of the deep scattering layer, knowing that where the small creatures go, there is food in abundance. The twilight zone is a battleground, and every night, countless dramas of survival play out in the darkness. But this is not a cruel place. It is simply alive. Predator and prey have evolved together for millions of years, locked in an eternal dance of adaptation. The hunter owns its senses. The hunted refines its defenses, and the ocean itself becomes richer for their struggle. Lanternfish are among the most abundant creatures in the migration, and indeed among the most abundant vertebrates on Earth. There may be more individual lanternfish in the ocean than there are humans on land. They are small, rarely longer than 10 centimeters, but what they lack in size they make up for in sheer numbers. Their name comes from the rows of photophores along their bodies, organs that produce light through chemical reactions. Each species has its own unique pattern of lights, like a living barcode. These lights help them find mates in the darkness, but they also attract the attention of predators. To be visible is to be vulnerable, even in the deep. Krill are another pillar of the migration. These small crustaceans, looking like tiny shrimp, travel in enormous swarms. Some species of krill undertake vertical migrations of over 1 kilometer each day, an astonishing distance for animals only a few centimeters long. They feed on phytoplankton and zooplankton at the surface, consuming the base of the ocean food web. And in turn, they are consumed by everything larger. Fish, squid, seabirds, seals, and the great baleen whales all depend on krill. The Antarctic krill in particular forms swarms so dense they can turn the water pink and can be seen from space. Krill are the foundation upon which much of the ocean's life is built. Jellyfish, too, participate in the migration, though they move with a different grace than the fish and crustaceans. Many species pulse their way upward through the water column at night, dragging long, stinging tentacles behind them. These tentacles are covered in nematocysts, microscopic harpoons filled with venom that fire at the slightest touch. The jellyfish drift through the migration like living nets, entangling and paralyzing small fish and zooplankton. Some deep-sea jellyfish have adapted to the darkness with bioluminescent displays, their bells glowing with rippling waves of light, possibly to startle predators or attract prey. They are among the most alien-looking creatures in the Twilight Zone, and among the most successful. Squid are the intelligent hunters of the Twilight Zone. With large, complex eyes and agile bodies, they are formidable predators. Some species of squid migrate vertically, while others remain at depth, waiting for prey to come to them. They hunt using a combination of stealth and speed, shooting forward with powerful jets of water from their siphons, extending their tentacles to snare fish or crustaceans. Many deep-sea squid have photophores as well, using light to communicate, camouflage, or even hypnotize their prey. Some can change color and texture in an instant, a trick that works even in the near-total darkness, suggesting they may use bioluminescence to see each other more clearly. Among the strangest of the migrating creatures are the hatchetfish. These small, deep-bodied fish look like they have been compressed from the sides, giving them a shape reminiscent of a hatchet blade. Their bodies are covered in highly reflective silver scales, and their undersides are lined with photophores that produce downward-facing light. This is counter-illumination, a remarkable adaptation that allows them to match the faint light coming from above, effectively erasing their own shadows. To a predator looking up from below, a hatchetfish becomes nearly invisible, blending perfectly into the dim background glow. They are masters of camouflage in a world where there is almost no light to hide in. Not all the predators come from the Twilight Zone itself. The migrants attract hunters from above and below. Tuna, marlin, and other fast-swimming surface predators dive down at dusk to intercept the ascending mass of food. From below, larger deep-sea fish like viperfish and dragonfish patrol the depths, ambushing migrants with terrifying teeth and expandable stomachs. And sometimes, the ocean's largest residents join the hunt. Whales, particularly sperm whales and beaked whales, dive to incredible depths to feed on squid and fish in the mesopelagic zone. They can hold their breath for over an hour, descending 1 kilometer or more into the darkness to feast on the abundance there. But for all the hunting that happens, the majority of migrants survive each journey. The sheer number of participants ensures the predators cannot catch them all. This is the safety in numbers, the same principle that protects herds of wildebeest crossing rivers filled with crocodiles. Most of the small fish, krill, and jellyfish will reach the surface, feed, and return to depth unharmed. They will repeat this journey every night of their lives, traveling more vertical distance in a year than many migratory birds fly across entire continents. It is a testament to the power of instinct, the relentless drive to feed and survive that shapes every living thing in the ocean. The migrants have been rising for hours, and now we approach the surface layer with them. The darkness here is different from the darkness below. There is no bioluminescence, no background glow, just the velvet black of a moonless night. But the water is warmer, and if we could taste it, we would sense a richness that does not exist in the sterile depths. This is where phytoplankton bloom, where microscopic plants drift in their trillions, too small to see individually but collectively turning the water green with life. And where there are phytoplankton, there are zooplankton grazing upon them. The migrants have arrived at the feast. Zooplankton is a term that includes a staggering variety of organisms. Copepods, the tiny crustaceans we saw earlier, are the most numerous, but there are also larval stages of fish, crabs, barnacles, and countless other species. There are arrowworms, transparent predators that look like darts of glass. There are pteropods, sea butterflies that swim with delicate wing-like appendages. All of them drift and swim in the surface waters, feeding on phytoplankton or feeding on each other. And all of them are now the targets of the migrants. The nighttime surface waters have become a feeding frenzy, though it happens in slow motion, in near silence, invisible to us on land. The lanternfish that have traveled so far now swim through the plankton soup with their mouths open, filtering and snapping up copepods and other small prey. Their bioluminescent lights have dimmed now that they are near the surface. There is no need to advertise their presence here. Krill, too, are feeding voraciously, their feathery legs creating currents that pull phytoplankton into their mouths. Jellyfish drift with their tentacles spread wide, a living curtain of stinging threads that capture anything unfortunate enough to touch them. This is what they traveled for. This is the purpose of their epic daily journey. Food is abundant here in a way it can never be in the deep, and they will eat as much as they can before dawn drives them back down. The feeding continues for hours. The migrants spread out across the surface layer, distributing themselves over a huge area. From above, if we could see them, the ocean would appear alive with movement. Seabirds take advantage as well, diving down from the air to snatch fish that venture too close to the surface. Dolphins and small whales patrol the area, using echolocation to track the concentrations of prey. The entire ocean food web is interconnected, and the vertical migration is the mechanism that links the deep to the surface, the bottom of the food chain to the top. Everything depends on this nightly exchange, and all of it depends on the continued darkness. But even as they feed, time is passing. The earth is turning. Somewhere to the east, the sky is beginning to lighten. Dawn is coming, and with it, danger. The migrants are adapted to darkness. Their transparent bodies, their bioluminescent lights, their huge eyes optimized for dim light, all of these are advantages in the twilight zone. But in the sunlit surface waters during the day, they become liabilities. A transparent body still casts a shadow. Large eyes are vulnerable to bright light. And without the cover of darkness, the migrants would be easy prey for the daytime hunters. They must return to depth before the sun rises, or they will not survive. The signal to descend is not a conscious decision. It is instinct, driven by light-sensitive cells that detect the changing wavelengths of the water. As the first pale glow of dawn touches the eastern horizon, the migrants begin to turn downward. Individuals become part of the mass again, orienting themselves toward the deep. The feast is over. It is time to return home. And so begins the second half of the migration, the descent back into the twilight zone. We will follow them down once more, watching as billions of creatures flee the coming light, seeking the safety of the deep darkness where they spend their days resting, digesting, and waiting for the next night to come. The descent happens faster than the ascent. The migrants are fleeing now, racing the sunrise. Within an hour, they will drop hundreds of meters, putting the lethal daylight far above them. Some will not make it. Predators that hunt at dawn specifically target the stragglers, the sick and the slow, who cannot keep up with the mass. Seabirds dive repeatedly, taking advantage of the brief window when fish are still near the surface but illuminated by the growing light. But the majority will reach the twilight zone safely, disappearing back into the deep as if they were never here at all. The surface waters, so alive just moments ago, will appear empty once more. By the time the sun breaks fully above the horizon, painting the ocean surface with gold and pink light, the migration is complete. The deep, scattering layer has returned to its daytime depth. Sonar once again shows it as a dense band between 300 and 1,000 meters down. From a boat at the surface, there is no sign that anything extraordinary has happened. The ocean looks exactly as it did yesterday and the day before, and every day for millions of years. But you and I know the truth. We have seen what happens in the darkness. We have witnessed the largest migration on Earth, a spectacle that unfolds every single night in every ocean across the globe. And we are only beginning to understand its importance. Now that we have followed the migration through its complete cycle, let us explore more deeply the creatures that inhabit the twilight zone permanently and those that pass through it twice each day. This is a place of extremes, where life has adapted in ways that seem impossible. The challenges are profound. No light for energy, intense pressure. Cold temperatures. Sparse food. And yet, the biomass here rivals or exceeds that of the sunlit zone. How is this possible? The answer lies in the incredible diversity of adaptations that evolution has sculpted over hundreds of millions of years. Each species is a solution to the problem of surviving in the deep. Many Twilight Zone creatures have enormous eyes relative to their body size. This makes sense in a place where even the tiniest amount of light can mean the difference between finding prey or becoming prey. These eyes are specialized to detect bioluminescence and the faint downwelling light from the surface. Some species have tubular eyes, shaped like cylinders that point upward to detect silhouettes from above. Others have eyes with a golden or silvery reflective layer behind the retina, the tapetum lucidum, which reflects light back through the light-sensing cells a second time, effectively doubling their sensitivity. In the twilight zone, vision is everything, even when there is almost nothing to see. Transparency is another common adaptation. Many species of fish, squid, and jellyfish in the twilight zone have bodies that are nearly invisible. Their muscles, organs, and even bones are so translucent that light passes through them with little distortion. This makes them extremely difficult for predators to see, even when illuminated by bioluminescence. However, transparency is not perfect. Internal organs like the gut and eyes cannot be made transparent because they need to absorb light to function. Some transparent fish have evolved to tilt their bodies at specific angles to minimize their visible profile, while others have silvery or mirrored guts to reflect light and avoid casting a dark shadow inside their see-through bodies. Pressure at depth is immense, but it is not the problem you might think. Because the bodies of fish and most other marine creatures are mostly made of water, which is incompressible, they are not crushed by the pressure. They equalize internally. The challenge is more about maintaining the functionality of proteins and cell membranes at high pressure, and evolution has fine-tuned these molecules over time. Gas-filled organs like swim bladders, however, are a different story. At depth, a swim bladder would collapse under pressure or require so much energy to inflate that it becomes impractical. Many deep-sea fish have reduced or absent swim bladders, relying instead on light bones and lipid-rich tissues to maintain neutral buoyancy. Feeding strategies in the Twilight Zone are varied and often brutal. With food scarce, many predators have evolved to eat anything they can catch, even if it is larger than they are. Viperfish have fangs so long they cannot close their mouths and hinged skulls that allow them to swallow prey larger than themselves. Gulper eels have enormous, distensible mouths and stomachs that can expand to engulf massive meals. Black swallowers have been found with fish twice their own length inside their stomachs. When you encounter food only rarely, you must be able to take full advantage of it. These fish are the ultimate opportunists, built to consume and store as much energy as possible whenever the chance arises. Reproduction in the Twilight Zone presents its own challenges. Finding a mate in a vast, dark space where population densities are low is difficult. Some species, like certain anglerfish, have evolved extreme sexual dimorphism. The tiny male permanently fuses to the much larger female, becoming a parasitic mate that provides sperm whenever she is ready to spawn. Other species release bioluminescent courtship signals, flashing in species-specific patterns to attract mates from a distance. And many species synchronize their reproductive cycles with the lunar cycle or seasonal plankton blooms, ensuring that their larvae are released when food is most abundant, giving the next generation the best chance of survival. Gelatinous organisms thrive in the Twilight Zone. Jellyfish, siphonophores, salps, and stenophores drift through the water, filtering food or catching prey with stinging tentacles. Their bodies are made mostly of water, which makes them energetically cheap to build and maintain. Some siphonophores, colonial organisms that look like single jellyfish, can grow to incredible lengths. The longest known siphonophore was discovered recently off the coast of Australia, measuring over 40 meters from end to end, longer than a blue whale. These creatures are the drifting nets of the deep, passively filtering the water for food and growing to sizes that seem impossible for something with no skeleton and no brain. Life in the Twilight Zone moves to a slower rhythm than life at the surface. With lower temperatures and less food, metabolic rates are reduced. Fish grow more slowly and live longer. Some deep-sea fish may take a decade or more to reach maturity, and they may live for decades beyond that. Their movements are efficient and deliberate, conserving energy. They do not chase prey across long distances. They wait, hovering in place, burning as few calories as possible until something edible drifts or swims within range. In a food-limited environment, patience is not just a virtue. It is a survival strategy. The deep sea teaches us that life does not always have to be fast to be successful. We have mentioned bioluminescence several times, but let us now explore it fully, for it is one of the most magical aspects of the Twilight Zone. Bioluminescence is the production and emission of light by living organisms. It occurs when a chemical reaction involving a light-emitting molecule, usually luciferin, reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme, luciferase. The result is light, typically blue or green, because these wavelengths travel farthest in seawater. On land, bioluminescence is rare, limited to fireflies, glowworms, and a few fungi. But in the ocean, especially in the deep, it is the rule rather than the exception. The twilight zone is a constellation of living lights. Different species use bioluminescence for different purposes, and the variety of strategies is astounding. Some fish, like the lanternfish we have met, have photophores arranged in species-specific patterns along their bodies. These lights help individuals recognize members of their own species in the darkness, essential for schooling and mating. Other fish have photophores only on their bellies, used for counter-illumination to hide their silhouettes from predators below. Still others have bioluminescent lures, modified fin rays that glow to attract prey. The anglerfish is the most famous example, dangling a glowing lure in front of its enormous mouth, drawing curious fish and shrimp directly into its jaws. Bioluminescence is also used defensively. Many squid and shrimp can eject clouds of bioluminescent fluid when threatened, a strategy similar to a squid ejecting ink. The glowing cloud confuses the predator, illuminating it and making it visible to its own predators while the prey escapes into the darkness. Other creatures use bioluminescence as a burglar alarm. When attacked, they flash brilliantly, attracting the attention of larger predators. The idea is that the attacker will be scared off or eaten by something even bigger. In the twilight zone, light is not just a tool for hunting and communication. It is a weapon, a shield, and a language all at once. Some bioluminescent displays are truly spectacular. The comb jelly, or catenophore, creates shimmering rainbows of color as it pulses through the water. These are not bioluminescent in the chemical sense, but rather iridescent, caused by the diffraction of light off the beating cilia that propel the animal. True bioluminescent sea ctenophores also exist, glowing with green or blue light along their body. Siphonophores, those impossibly long colonial organisms, pulse with waves of bioluminescence that travel along their length, creating a light show that can be dozens of meters long. And certain species of jellyfish flash in unison when disturbed, creating entire fields of pulsing light in the deep ocean. The cook-cutter shark has perhaps one of the most unusual uses of bioluminescence. Its entire underside glows with a uniform light, but there is a dark patch around its neck that does not glow. When viewed from below, the shark's glowing body makes it nearly invisible against the faint light from above. But the dark collar breaks up its outline, making it look like a small fish rather than a shark. Larger predators, curious about what appears to be easy prey, approach to investigate. And that is when the cookie-cutter shark strikes, using its specialized teeth to gouge a circular plug of flesh from the larger animal before swimming away. It is camouflage as a lure, a disguise that draws in prey. Scientists are still discovering new bioluminescent creatures and new uses for light in the deep ocean. Recently, researchers found that many sharks and rays have biofluorescent proteins in their skin. While they do not produce their own light chemically, they can absorb blue light and re-emit it as green, creating a glowing appearance to other creatures that can see these wavelengths. This suggests that even in the deep twilight zone, there may be more light and color than we realize, but it exists in wavelengths our eyes cannot perceive. The deep ocean may be far more visually rich than we ever imagined, a lightscape invisible to us, but vivid to its inhabitants. The study of bioluminescence has practical applications as well. Scientists have borrowed the luciferase enzyme and luciferin molecule from bioluminescent organisms and used them in medical and biological research. These molecules allow researchers to tag and track cells, genes, and proteins, making them glow under specific conditions. Bioluminescent markers are used in cancer research, drug development, and genetic studies. The natural light of deep-sea creatures, developed over millions of years of evolution, has become a tool that helps us understand and fight human diseases. The twilight zone, so far from our daily lives, has given us gifts we are only beginning to understand. But perhaps the most profound aspect of bioluminescence is simply its beauty. To witness the twilight zone at night, filled with countless points of living light, is to see a spectacle that rivals the night sky itself. The ocean creates its own stars, its own constellations, made not of distant suns but of living creatures, communicating, hunting, and surviving in the dark. It is a reminder that light can exist even in the deepest darkness. The bioluminescent twilight zone is proof that beauty and wonder are not limited to the places we can easily reach. They exist everywhere, waiting to be discovered. The diel vertical migration does more than just feed billions of creatures. It plays a crucial role in one of the most important processes on Earth, the biological carbon pump. This is the mechanism by which carbon is transported from the atmosphere into the deep ocean, where it can be stored for hundreds or even thousands of years. The twilight zone migrants are the workers in this global factory, moving nutrients and carbon from the surface to the depths every single day. Without them, the chemistry of our ocean and atmosphere would be fundamentally different. To understand this, we need to follow the path of a single atom of carbon. It begins at the surface, where phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. These microscopic plants use the carbon to build their bodies, growing and multiplying in the sunlit waters. When zooplankton graze on the phytoplankton, the carbon is transferred up the food chain. Now imagine a lanternfish in the twilight zone at dusk, beginning its ascent. It rises to the surface at night and feeds on the zooplankton that have eaten the phytoplankton. The carbon is now inside the fish. Then, just before dawn, the fish descends back to the twilight zone, carrying that carbon with it. Some of that carbon will be respired as carbon dioxide in the deep water, and some will be excreted as waste. When the fish excretes waste in the deep water, that carbon is now hundreds of meters below the surface, removed from contact with the atmosphere. Deep ocean currents will carry it far from where it was absorbed, and it may take centuries for that water to return to the surface. In effect, the migration has taken carbon from the air and sequestered it in the deep ocean. Now multiply this by billions of fish, billions of krill, billions of jellyfish, all doing the same thing every night. The amount of carbon transported downward by the diel vertical migration is staggering. Some scientists estimate that the migration sequesters as much as 1 to 2 billion tons of carbon per year, a significant fraction of the ocean's total biological carbon pump. This process has profound implications for Earth's climate. The ocean absorbs about a quarter of all the carbon dioxide humans release into the atmosphere each year. Without the ocean's carbon sink, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels would be significantly higher, and climate change would be even more severe than it already is. And the diel vertical migration is a key part of how the ocean accomplishes this. The migrants are climate regulators, moving carbon from the atmosphere to the deep ocean with every ascent and descent. They have been doing this for millions of years, long before humans existed, but now, in the age of rising atmospheric carbon dioxide, their role has never been more important. But the biological carbon pump is not limited to the migration. There is also the passive sinking of organic matter, the marine snow we discussed earlier. Dead phytoplankton, fecal pellets, discarded mucus-feeding structures from salps and other gelatinous creatures, all of this material slowly sinks from the surface into the deep. As it falls, it is consumed by bacteria which break it down and respire carbon dioxide into the deep water. Some of the organic matter reaches the seafloor, where it can be buried in sediments and removed from the carbon cycle for millions of years, eventually forming deposits of organic carbon in the rock. The ocean floor is a vast carbon graveyard, and the migration helps stock it. Nutrient cycling is also connected to the migration. When the migrants feed at the surface and then excrete waste in the deep, they are not just moving carbon, they are moving nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and other nutrients essential for life. In the deep, these nutrients accumulate in the cold water. Over time, ocean currents and upwelling bring that deep water back to the surface, delivering nutrients to the sunlit zone where phytoplankton can use them. This is how the ocean recycles its fertility, ensuring that surface waters remain productive even though nutrients are constantly being lost to the deep. The migrants are part of this great recycling system connecting the surface and the abyss. There is a delicate balance to all of this. The amount of carbon the ocean can absorb depends on the health and abundance of the organisms that drive the biological carbon pump. If the Twilight Zone creatures declined in number, less carbon would be transported to the deep. If phytoplankton blooms were disrupted, less carbon would be fixed at the surface to begin with. Climate change, ocean acidification, pollution, and overfishing all threaten this balance. We are only beginning to understand how human activities might affect the Twilight Zone and the migration, but the potential consequences are sobering. The ocean's ability to regulate carbon depends on the continued health of its smallest, most hidden inhabitants. The biological carbon pump reminds us that everything in the ocean is connected. A phytoplankton cell at the surface, a krill in the Twilight Zone, a whale feeding at depth, a current carrying water across the globe, all of these are part of a single, integrated system. The diel vertical migration is not just a behavior of individual species. It is an emergent property of the ecosystem, a global phenomenon that shapes the planet. And we, living on land, breathing air, are part of this system too. The oxygen in every breath we take was produced by phytoplankton in the ocean. The climate we experience is regulated by ocean currents and carbon pumps. We are intimately connected to the Twilight Zone whether we know it or not. For millions of years, the Twilight Zone has been a refuge, a hidden realm largely untouched by the surface world. Humans are increasingly turning their attention to the deep ocean, and the Twilight Zone is now facing threats it has never encountered before. Overfishing, climate change, pollution, deep-sea mining, and even underwater noise are beginning to impact this fragile ecosystem. The creatures that perform the greatest migration on Earth are at risk, and with them, the processes that sustain the ocean and regulate our climate. If we are to protect the Twilight Zone, we must first understand what threatens it and why it matters. One of the most immediate threats is commercial fishing. As fish stocks in the sunlit zone decline due to overfishing, the industry is looking deeper. The Twilight Zone contains an immense biomass of fish, particularly lanternfish, and there have been proposals to harvest them on an industrial scale. Lanternfish could be processed into fish meal and fish oil, used to feed farmed fish, livestock, and even as supplements for humans. But extracting such a keystone species from the Twilight Zone could have catastrophic consequences. Lanternfish are a primary food source for tuna, marlin, seals, whales, and seabirds. Removing them would collapse food webs and disrupt the biological carbon pump, with impacts felt throughout the ocean and beyond. Climate change is altering the Twilight Zone in ways we are only beginning to understand. Ocean temperatures are rising even at depth, which affects the metabolism and distribution of species. Warmer water holds less oxygen, and oxygen minimum zones are expanding in many parts of the ocean, squeezing the habitable range for Twilight Zone creatures. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess atmospheric carbon dioxide, is making it harder for organisms with calcium carbonate shells or skeletons to build and maintain their structures. This includes many zooplankton species, the base of the migration's food web. If the zooplankton decline, everything that depends on them is at risk. Plastic pollution has reached even the deepest parts of the ocean. Microplastics, tiny fragments of degraded plastic less than 5 millimeters across, are now found throughout the water column, including in the Twilight Zone. These particles are ingested by zooplankton and small fish, mistaking them for food. Once inside an organism, microplastics can block digestive tracts, leach toxic chemicals, and accumulate up the food chain. Studies have found microplastics in the stomachs of Twilight Zone fish and even in the fecal pellets that sink to the deep sea floor. We are polluting a realm we have barely explored, contaminating the very processes that sustain the ocean's health. Deep sea mining is an emerging threat. The seafloor in some regions is rich in minerals like manganese, cobalt, and rare earth elements, which are increasingly in demand for batteries and electronics. Mining companies are developing technologies to extract these minerals from the abyssal plains and seamounts, often at depths below the Twilight Zone. But the process creates sediment plumes that can drift for hundreds of kilometers, smothering filter feeders and disrupting ecosystems. The noise and light from mining operations could also interfere with the behavior of Twilight Zone creatures, potentially disrupting the migration itself. The deep ocean is not an empty wasteland. It is full of life, and mining threatens to destroy it before we even understand what is there. Underwater noise pollution is a less obvious but growing concern. The ocean is not silent. It is filled with natural sounds. The clicks of dolphin echolocation, the songs of whales, the snapping of shrimp, the crackle of coral reefs. But human-made noise from shipping, sonar, seismic surveys, and industrial activities is overwhelming these natural soundscapes. Many marine animals rely on sound to navigate, communicate, and find food. Loud, low-frequency noise can travel for hundreds of kilometers underwater, potentially disrupting the behavior of Twilight Zone organisms. While research in this area is still limited, there is concern that chronic noise pollution could interfere with the migration, affecting when and how creatures move through the water column. Protecting the Twilight Zone requires both scientific research and political will. We need to understand this ecosystem far better before we exploit it. How many species live there? How do they interact? What role do they play in the global carbon cycle? What would happen if key species were removed or if conditions changed? These are questions scientists are racing to answer using advanced technologies like autonomous underwater vehicles, environmental DNA sampling, and long-term monitoring stations. But research alone is not enough. We need international agreements to manage fishing, regulate mining, reduce pollution, and limit activities that could harm the Twilight Zone. The ocean is a global commons, and its protection requires global cooperation. There is still time to protect the Twilight Zone, but the window is closing. As human pressure on the ocean increases, we must decide what kind of future we want. Do we want to exploit every last resource, mining and fishing the deep ocean until it is as degraded as many surface ecosystems? Or do we want to preserve these hidden realms, allowing them to continue their vital functions and maintaining the health of the planet for generations to come? The creatures of the Twilight Zone cannot speak for themselves. They cannot advocate for their own protection. It falls to us to be their voice, to recognize the value of what we cannot see, and to act with wisdom and restraint. What does the future hold for the Twilight Zone and the greatest migration on Earth? That depends largely on the choices we make in the coming decades. If current trends continue, the Twilight Zone will face increasing pressure from climate change, fishing, pollution, and industrial exploitation. Some species may adapt, but others will decline or disappear. The migration itself could weaken, transporting less carbon to the deep and disrupting the ocean's role in regulating climate. But there is another path, one where we learn from our mistakes with surface ecosystems and choose to protect the deep ocean before it is too late. The Twilight Zone could become a model for how humanity can coexist with nature, even in the most remote places. Marine protected areas are one tool for conservation. By designating large regions of ocean as off-limits to fishing, mining, and other extractive activities, we can give ecosystems a chance to recover and maintain their natural functions. Some countries have already created vast marine reserves, protecting millions of square kilometers of ocean. Extending protections to include the Twilight Zone would safeguard the migration and the species that depend on it. But for protections to be effective, they must be enforced, and they must be large enough to encompass the ranges of migratory species. The Twilight Zone is a global ecosystem, and its protection will require international coordination on an unprecedented scale. Technology will play a crucial role in understanding and protecting the Twilight Zone. Advances in robotics, sensors, and artificial intelligence are allowing scientists to explore the deep ocean as never before. Autonomous underwater vehicles can map vast areas, taking high-resolution images and collecting data on temperature, salinity, oxygen levels, and the distribution of life. Environmental DNA techniques can identify species from tiny water samples, revealing the diversity of life without needing to capture or disturb animals. Satellites can track changes in ocean color and temperature from space, providing a global view of ecosystem health. These tools give us the knowledge we need to make informed decisions about conservation and management. Public awareness is equally important. Most people have never heard of the Twilight Zone or the diel vertical migration. They do not know that the ocean has a hidden middle layer teeming with life, or that billions of creatures undertake a daily journey through the darkness. By sharing the stories of these remarkable animals and the processes they drive, we can inspire a sense of wonder and a desire to protect them. The ocean's health is not just the concern of scientists and policymakers. It affects everyone. The air we breathe, the climate we live in, the food many communities depend on, all of these are connected to the ocean. When people understand this, they can become advocates for change. There are signs of hope. In recent years, awareness of ocean issues has grown dramatically. Documentaries, scientific publications, and social media have brought the wonders and challenges of the ocean to global audiences. Youth climate movements are demanding action on environmental issues, including ocean protection. Some fishing companies are adopting more sustainable practices, and there is growing interest in ocean-based solutions to climate change, such as protecting and restoring marine ecosystems that sequester carbon. The momentum is building, and there is a real possibility that the Twilight Zone can be protected before irreversible damage is done. But hope alone is not enough. We must act. The Twilight Zone also holds secrets that could benefit humanity in unexpected ways. The adaptations of deep-sea creatures, from bioluminescence to pressure tolerance to efficient energy use, inspire innovations in biotechnology, materials, science, and engineering. Enzymes from deep-sea bacteria are used in industrial processes. Bioluminescent proteins aid medical research. The study of how deep-sea animals survive in extreme conditions informs our understanding of the limits of life, with implications for astrobiology and the search for life on other worlds. Protecting the Twilight Zone is not just about preserving what exists. It is about keeping open the possibility of future discoveries that we cannot yet imagine. Ultimately, the fate of the Twilight Zone is a reflection of our values. Do we value short-term profit over long-term sustainability? Do we see the ocean as a resource to be exploited, or as a living system that deserves respect and care? The creatures of the Twilight Zone have been making their daily migration for millions of years, long before humans existed, and likely long after we are gone if we allow them to survive. They are part of a story far larger than our own, a story of life adapting, evolving, and thriving in every corner of the planet. To protect the Twilight Zone is to honor that story, to recognize that we are not separate from nature but deeply embedded within it. The future of the Twilight Zone is unwritten. It will be shaped by scientific discoveries, policy decisions, public awareness, and countless individual actions. Every choice we make about how we use the ocean, from the seafood we eat to the policies we support to the carbon we emit, has consequences for this hidden realm. The migration will continue as long as the conditions allow it, a testament to the resilience of life. But resilience has limits. If we push the Twilight Zone too far, we may lose it, and with it, a vital part of the Earth's life support system. Choice is ours. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose to protect the greatest migration on Earth. As we near the end of our journey, let us reflect on what we have learned. The diel vertical migration is not an isolated phenomenon. It is part of a vast, interconnected web of processes that link every part of the ocean, from the sunlit surface to the abyssal plains, from the poles to the equator. Ocean currents carry water and nutrients around the globe. Whales and fish migrate across entire ocean basins. Plankton drift on currents connecting distant ecosystems. And the Twilight Zone migrants, rising and sinking every day, tie the surface to the deep. The ocean is one continuous, living system, and everything within it is connected. To understand the Twilight Zone is to begin to understand the ocean as a whole. The ocean is also connected to the land and the atmosphere. Rivers carry nutrients from land to sea, fertilizing coastal waters and fueling phytoplankton blooms. Winds drive surface currents and mix the upper layers of the ocean, bringing deep water to the surface in some regions. The ocean absorbs heat and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, moderating the climate and slowing global warming. The water cycle, driven by evaporation from the ocean surface, brings rain to land, sustaining terrestrial ecosystems. The Twilight Zone, hidden beneath the waves, is part of this planetary scale system. What happens in the deep affects the surface, the atmosphere, and ultimately life on land. One of the most fascinating connections involves whales. Many species of whales feed in the Twilight Zone or on creatures that migrate through it. Sperm whales dive to incredible depths to hunt squid. Beaked whales feed on fish and crustaceans in the mesopelagic. Even baleen whales, which feed on krill and small fish near the surface, depend indirectly on the Twilight Zone because krill are vertical migrants. When whales defecate near the surface after feeding at depth, they release nutrients that stimulate phytoplankton growth. This is known as the whale pump, a process that moves nutrients upward, opposite to the usual flow. Whales, then, are part of the ocean's nutrient cycling, connecting the Twilight Zone to the sunlit surface in yet another way. Seabirds, too, connect the ocean to the land. Many seabirds feed on fish and squid that participate in the diel vertical migration. Albatrosses, petrels, and shearwaters roam vast distances across the open ocean, using their keen sense of smell to locate concentrations of prey. When they return to their nests on remote islands, they bring nutrients from the sea to the land, fertilizing island ecosystems that would otherwise be barren. The guano of seabirds, rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, has even shaped human history, once being mined extensively for use as fertilizer. The Twilight Zone, through the fish it supports, sustains the seabirds, which in turn sustain the islands, which once sustained human agriculture. Everything is connected. Even the smallest organisms connect distant parts of the ocean. Viruses, the most abundant biological entities in the sea, infect bacteria and phytoplankton, causing them to burst open and release their contents. This viral shunt redirects nutrients away from larger organisms and keeps them in the microbial food web where they can be recycled quickly. Viruses also drive evolution by transferring genes between different species of bacteria, spreading adaptations across the ocean. And when cells infected by viruses die and sink, they contribute to the marine snow that feeds the twilight zone. Even viruses, invisible and often overlooked, play a role in the ocean's grand cycles. The ocean's connectivity means that actions in one place can have consequences far away. Pollution from rivers enters coastal waters and spreads across ocean basins. Greenhouse gases released anywhere on Earth warm the entire planet and alter ocean chemistry. Overfishing in one region can deplete stocks that migrate to another. And disturbances to the twilight zone, whether from climate change, fishing, or other human activities, can ripple outward, affecting surface ecosystems, the carbon cycle, and the global climate. The ocean does not respect borders or boundaries. It is a global commons, and its health is a shared responsibility. What we do in one part of the world affects the entire ocean and ultimately the entire planet. Understanding the ocean's interconnectedness can feel overwhelming. The systems are so vast, so complex, that it is hard to see how individual actions matter. But they do. Every piece of plastic that is kept out of the ocean makes a difference. Every effort to reduce carbon emissions helps slow ocean warming and acidification. Every vote for policies that protect marine ecosystems has an impact. And every person who learns about the Twilight Zone and shares that knowledge with others helps build the awareness needed for change. We are all connected to the ocean, and we all have a role to play in its future. You have a role to play. The story of the Twilight Zone is ultimately a story about life itself. It is a story of adaptation and resilience, of organisms finding ways to thrive in the most challenging environments. It is a story of connections, of how countless species and processes work together to create a functioning ecosystem. And it is a story of mystery, of a vast hidden realm that we are only beginning to explore and understand. The Twilight Zone reminds us that there is still so much to discover on our own planet, still so many wonders waiting just beneath the surface. And it challenges us to be good stewards of these wonders, to protect them not just for ourselves, but for all the life that depends on them and for the generations yet to come. And so, our journey into the Twilight Zone comes to an end. We have descended into the deep, witnessed the largest migration on Earth, met the strange and beautiful creatures that call the mesopelagic home, and explored the vital roles they play in the health of our ocean and our planet. The diel vertical migration is a phenomenon of staggering scale and importance, yet it remains largely invisible to us, hidden in the darkness beneath the waves. But now you know. You have seen what happens every night in the ocean, and you understand its significance. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? How will you be a voice for the Twilight Zone, for the migrants, for the ocean itself? The future is not yet written. Together, we can ensure that the greatest migration on Earth continues for millions of years to come. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until we meet again, may you carry the light of the deep with you.